Sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our
What if all isn't as it seems? What if the reality you found was false? A carefully constructed narrative by unseen special interests designed to manipulate your opinion.
Third time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
The campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
And according to this nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Try Camels yourself. The cigarette so many doctors enjoy.
If your email inbox is out of control and you've given up sorting it out, a Baltimore company thinks it has a solution for you. Could this be the end of email overload?
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 Could this be the end of email overload? Could this be the end of email overload? Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload? Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of your email overload?
Could this be the end of 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 that email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload? Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end to email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
The show, I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest. Well, I scream, you scream, you know the rest. I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
Enjoyed from a desk or the couch.
From a desk or the couch. From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or a couch.
From a desk or your couch. From the desk or the couch. From your desk or the couch.
From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or a couch.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Also interesting is, remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us.
All these anchors and all these markets are required to read this script. It's attacking fake news, but really what it's doing, it's kind of like the Fox Fair and Balanced slogan. It's a way of saying, we're fair, everybody else is biased. It's taking a page out of Trump's playbook. And I've been talking to staffers in markets, David, that say they're sickened by this, they're uncomfortable with it. Quote, my staff is up in arms about this.
Nothing says we value independent media like dozens of reporters forced to repeat the same message over and over again like members of a brainwashed cult.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
While fans and critics were battling each other over how awesome or terrible Star Wars The Last Jedi was, Disney quietly, or if you're an investor, loudly and boldly, made an offer to add another gigantic chunk to their already impressive media galactic empire by merging with 21st Century Fox for an estimated $52 billion. But should Disney and 21st Century Fox go through the merger, it will shrink the already small field of media mega conglomerates in the United States from 6 to 5. Now, this is a huge deal and perhaps a bit confusing for those who aren't really following this story, so let me visualize it and simplify it for you guys by using Star Wars, because it's basically like the only thing I truly understand. So this is the Star Wars galaxy. As a whole, it makes up the media landscape of America. Competing for power are 6 large factions. Let's go through them. In the mid-rim, we have Comcast. They're the largest media organization in the world. With a reported revenue of $80.4 billion, they own big names like Universal and NBC, and they're also the largest service provider in the galaxy. While Time Warner is one of the smaller mega conglomerates on our list, they still brought in about $28.1 billion in annual revenue. They own assets like Warner Brothers Studios, DC, and CNN. Now, in the core of the galaxy, we have the Disney Empire. They are the second largest media mega conglomerate in the galaxy of America, with an annual revenue of $55.1 billion, and in a way own the soul and children of the galaxy. They have brands like Lucasfilms, ESPN, Marvel, ABC, and Disney theme parks. The 21st Century Fox order owns a lineup of Fox products like FX, Fox Sports, and 20th Century Fox. Now, in the outer rim, pretty much forgotten by everyone else, is the National Amusements Alliance. They're the smallest mega conglomerates, bringing in $13.8 billion a year. They hold properties like CBS, Viacom, and Paramount. Together, these 6 empires, federations, alliances own about 90% of all media in the United States. In 1983, or the Old Republic era, there were 50 companies owning that same share of media. So why is this important? Should you be worried?
But the truth is that almost every avenue from which we get our information in the mainstream media is controlled by only 6 corporations that have one specific interest: profit. News censorship is happening every day, but not necessarily from the top down blacking out the stories, but also in the form of self-censorship, framing, backpaging, all to protect the interests of those corporate conglomerates. So what impact does it have when an agency that's supposed to serve as a watchdog for the powerful becomes a lapdog for the powerful? To break down some of the most egregious cases of censorship and conflicts of interest in the corporate media, BTS producer Manuel Rapalo.
Hi, Abby. How's it going?
Hi, what's going on? So,
good.
You know, when I think of the top-down censorship, kind of the hand of the corporation blacking out a story, 2 cases come to mind that are the most egregious. The first one was News Corp. Fox News was going to air a story on the bovine growth hormone, BGH, bovine growth hormone, of course, another Monsanto case of censorship where they were invested in Monsanto for advertising, and their boss said no when a team of Fox investigative reporters wanted to cover this story. Monsanto threatened the station, sent them a letter saying there will be dire consequences, this is a direct quote, dire consequences for Fox News if the story is aired, and I wanted to play what happened when they confronted their boss about this.
I said, you know, this is news. This is important. This is stuff people need to know. And I'll never forget, he didn't pause a beat, and he said, we just paid $3 billion for these television stations. We'll tell you what the news is. The news is what we say it is.
When it comes to the media, really, it's not just the parent companies. It's also your corporate sponsors. It's also the people that are putting out the ads. I mean, Monsanto, had this story actually aired, would have probably pulled their advertisement for Roundup, for aspartame, and all those other products that again, aren't tested, but advertise all over Fox News. And it's really interesting that you point out this story, because the reporters and that guy that you just played, they actually countersued against Fox under Florida's whistleblower statute. And as it turns out, under Florida law, they lost that lawsuit because it turns out it's not illegal to falsify the news.
You also were researching a story about ABC.
Sure. This is just another one of those examples. Back in 1998, kind of a very clear-cut example. ABC was 2020, they were going to air this story about how Disneyland is actually hiring pedophiles. I mean, it's just a crazy story. You're thinking a theme park for kids and pedophiles just sounds terrible. They weren't able to pull the story. Why? Because Disney owns ABC. It's very clear cut. You don't want to endanger or make the corporate interests look bad. So, I mean, that's one of those clear-cut stories. But, I mean, it also raises questions. That one's relatively easy, not to downplay pedophiles, but when you look at cases like CNN's running a story about the BP oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon spill, about the cleanup efforts and how, things are getting better. And as soon as the segment's over, you see a commercial come on, and it's BP, and it's BP representatives going, come down to the coast and eat some one-eyed shrimp or whatever they're doing. I mean, there's a problem in there, and it's so obvious, but I think people don't realize it as much as it's in your face.
They don't realize it, but Project Censored, one of the greatest research organizations in the country about censorship in the media, did a study where they found that 118 people only sit on 288 corporate boards that unify kind of this media conglomerate and corporate America. So you have people involved in Kraft Foods, Monsanto, so many different things, defense corporations, the pharmaceutical industry, lobbying together, all sitting on these boards, and it really is such a small amount of people really controlling all these things from the top down.
It's 6
What
corporations.
are some of those shocking things that you found in terms of just conflicts of interest?
I was looking at this, and when we're looking at conflict of interest, there's two things that really need to be pointed out. It's not just corporations. A lot of execs that sit in corporations and you said it in your introduction, they're sitting on, for example, NBC, Citigroup, Exxon, Philip Morris. Their execs sit on board of directors for Philip Morris. Mm-hmm. That's not okay. CBS has board members sitting in Walmart, General Dynamics. These are drone manufacturers. The execs for CBS are the same guys that are sitting in the board of directors for drone manufacturers?
And I think
how is that okay?
And I think when people think of the corporate media, they're like, oh, well, of course, the corporate media. But really, we're talking about NPR and PBS as well. I mean, NPR was running a story during the BP oil spill featuring a scientist that was talking about how oil was in the Gulf that would bacteria that would eat the oil. It was like, well, this bacteria is just going to clean up the oil itself. We don't have to worry about anything. Turns out later, according to Greg Palast, the scientist interviewed about the story was given $500 million dollars from BP. NPR never mentioned this detail, this quaint detail, when they were doing the story. And of course, we saw PBS.
The thing about that, the money that, I mean, we're talking about one guy that received $500 million. That money, that money actually spread out. It was more like a money spill, is what Greg Palast said in that report that he did. So you've got all these universities, all these independent researchers all over the country doing research on oil biology, and they're all being funded by BP.
And PBS aired the drone documentary by Lockheed Martin, pretty much a promo for drones. And, us talking about all this really calls into question. The U.S. State Department issued a warning about restricted press freedom in the rest of the world, meanwhile ignoring that the consolidation of 90% of the U.S. media by 6 corporations. I mean, really, we're ranked 32 in the world in press freedom here.
Exactly. And I know that we had an infographic somewhere. I wonder if we can pull it up. If not, it shows, between 1983 and now, you're gone from this multitude of media organizations in the country and really narrowing it down to 6. 6 that control nearly everything that we see and watch in this country, everything that we see and watch. And these organizations, they're also making political contributions. So, they're throwing money into both sides of the equation, Democrats and Republicans, and they get back those special connections and inside information, turning talking points into news, essentially.